Welcome back to The Explainer. I'm your host, Ekendayo, and today we're exploring a story that literally pushes the absolute extremes of the human experience. We're going to look at the harrowing realities of a rusting, severely delayed legal system, and then contrast that with a profound, almost unbelievable journey of internal transformation. We're talking about Olumuyiwa Ayodeji Adedeji. This is a man who survived a staggering 15 years behind bars, carrying the immense weight of a death sentence, only to emerge fundamentally changed. So let's dive into how a journey that began in the dark depths of a prison cell ultimately led to a truly unexpected destination.
I want you to picture this for a second. You're standing in a cold, echoing courtroom. You've been waiting for a resolution to your case for years. The judge looks down at you, delivers the verdict of death by hanging, and then wraps up the proceedings with these chilling final words. May your soul rest in perfect peace. Put yourself in Ayodeji's shoes right there. The sheer gravity of those words dropping like lead weights in a silent room. For most of us, right, that phrase is strictly reserved for eulogies. But for Ayodeji back in 2016, it was a sudden, terrifying condemnation spoken directly to the living. But deep down, in that exact moment, instead of just completely crumbling under the weight of his own impending death, a strange, quiet realization actually began to take root in his mind. He had to decide right then and there exactly how he was going to process whatever time he had left.
Okay, let's jump right into section 1, the judge's final words.
To really grasp what he went through, we kind of have to map out the brutal math of his life. That grim sign-off from the bench, those specific words from the judge, actually became the anchor of his entire experience. On the surface, sure, it was the ultimate stamp of finality, but paradoxically, it became the exact catalyst for his ultimate reformation. Instead of breaking him, that haunting courtroom farewell actually planted a seed. But we've got to examine the systemic timeline of how he even got there. First, he's arrested. Then comes an agonizing 6-year period where he is merely awaiting trial. In 2016, the gavel falls, bringing that devastating death sentence. And finally, fast forward to 2026, a total of 15 years have been served, culminating in his eventual release. It's decades of a human life, just reduced to a chronological sequence of systemic delays and eventual condemnation.
Moving right along to section 2, 6 years in the void.
Before that 2016 sentence, however, there was the waiting. Let's really focus on the excruciating psychological toll of his initial confinement. Imagine waking up every single day for over 2,000 days, locked away in an absolute void. During this massive 6-year chunk of his life, not a single complainant appeared in court, no one showed up to accuse him. Just absolute silence. He was literally just waiting for the legal system to even acknowledge his existence while life outside moved on completely without him. And then, bam! The jarring whiplash of a sudden resolution. After 6 years of absolutely nothing, the trial abruptly commences in a flurry of chaotic action. You see the stark, terrifying contrast between an agonizing, forgotten limbo and a rushed, fatal conclusion.
Which brings us to section 3, the Phantom Police Investigator.
So, this brings us to the bizarre turning point where that rusted legal machinery suddenly and unexpectedly roared to life. After years of absolutely no complainant stepping forward, how does a case suddenly just proceed to a death sentence? Well, let's walk through this rapid-fire sequence of highly unusual events. Step 1. The case finally, abruptly opens. Step 2. A completely anonymous police officer, someone Ayodeji had never even seen before, suddenly appears acting as the investigating police officer or IPO. This phantom investigator's arrival completely changes the game. Step 3. With this new officer pushing things forward, pressure is heavily mounted on the complainant's manager to testify. And Step 4, it all swiftly concludes with that devastating sentence, death by hanging.
Now, what's really interesting here is the impersonal, almost arbitrary nature of how his fate was sealed. An officer completely unknown to Adedeji stepped in to act as the IPO. Think about the sheer helplessness of that situation. You've waited 6 years for your accusers to arrive, and when the system finally moves, it's driven by a total stranger pushing the gears forward. It honestly shows just how easily a life can be swept away by bureaucratic momentum once that machinery finally decides to move, completely regardless of who's actually operating it.
All right, let's look at section 4, 15 years inside.
This is where the story pivots. We're going to leave the cold, impersonal chaos of the legal system behind and step into the deeply personal perspective of his time on death row. Because really, what happens to a human mind when it's locked in a cage and told it's going to die? 15. Just let that number hang in the air for a second. 15 years. That's more than 5,400 days and nights spent behind bars. It's an entire chapter of a human life, lived under the ever-present shadow of the gallows. It's a timeline so heavy, so incredibly vast, that it almost defies comprehension for anyone who hasn't actually lived it.
Yet, within that overwhelming span of time, something truly incredible happened. Instead of succumbing to despair, instead of letting the fiery anger of a delayed and downright bizarre trial consume him, Ayodeji accepted his harrowing journey. He made a conscious, active choice to undergo a complete spiritual reformation. Those chilling words from the judge, "May your soul rest in perfect peace," they took on an entirely new meaning for him. He realized he didn't have to wait for death to find that peace. He cultivated it from within, right there in his cell. He chose to relentlessly reform his own spirit, completely transforming his internal world, while society kept his physical body locked away.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 5, Searching for the Judge.
So, this deep internal change brings us to the astonishing aftermath of his eventual release in 2026. This is where the story defies literally all expectations and sets up a climax that truly makes you question human nature. Think about it. Actually, ask yourself right now, what do you do when you're finally free? If you step out of a prison gate after 15 years, carrying the memory of a death sentence handed down to you after 6 years of silence and the sudden push of a phantom investigator, where is the very first place your feet take you? Do you run as far away as possible? Do you harbor deep, burning resentment?
Well, as recounted on the Fire City podcast, Ayodeji made a shocking decision. He said, and I quote, "After my release from prison, I went back looking for the judge that sentenced me to death." Now, he didn't seek out the judge out of a desire for vengeance. Actually, scratch that. It wasn't about retribution or anger at all. Driven by the profound, unwavering inner peace he had actively cultivated during his 15 years inside, he went back to face the very man who condemned him. He just wanted to show the judge that he was, fundamentally, completely transformed from the man who stood in that cold courtroom a decade prior.
It leaves us with an incredibly powerful thought to end on. We've seen the systemic failures, the bizarre courtroom delays, and the heavy gavel of the law. But Ayodeji's journey suggests something far, far deeper. It forces us to ask, does true justice, true closure, and peace actually come from the courtroom, or does it come from within? It's a stark reminder of the absolute incredible resilience of the human soul, even when the systems built around us entirely fail. I'm Akindayo. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll leave you to ponder that question until next time.